so many folks again. I was looking at my, the little, digital wallet on my phone the other day, and I've been on 192 flights this year. So it's really good to keep my tail on the ground for a minute and catch up and hear from all of you and just spend time. It is obviously it is a complete rodeo, to put it kindly, in DC right now. And it is really a profound encouragement to get to be home and meet people who are living their commitment to our country and with their one and precious life, working to keep and build national health, to support our veterans and our seniors in our schools, people that are keeping the lights on and the water clean, at our public utilities, our farmers. It is such an encouragement to just be with good people. And I consider all of you part of that fabric also. I think one of the really difficult or the real vulnerabilities of the current world that we're in is this idea that everything it's a consumer good, that you can buy a clean environment, or you can buy health, or that you can buy real community, or a democracy. Democracy is not a binary choice that happens once a year on election day. It is a deliberative, or it needs to be a deliberative process where we sit down and talk with each other candidly and openly about what we think is worth having at the end of the day. When we get into this sort of rat race about just what you think you can get, it's dead. When you get into this sort of thing of this scarcity mentality of it's us versus them, or it's this fight, you get cornered into spending your life pursuing something that you didn't want in the first place. And I've felt that and been thinking that a lot, especially thinking about nobody actually likes health insurance, right? It's not, we want health, and we spend all of our time trying to debate the minutia and the criteria of getting out from under the thing that we don't even like. We want health. We want to see our kids at night. We want 8 hours of sleep at night. We want to be able to eat real food. And how do we animate movement towards those things that are worth having at the end of the day? And I kind of knifed my way onto Appropriations Committee. It's rare for people in my caucus to make it there in their second term. I was able to get on Approps, and it's been really interesting because, right, you go through all the funding bills, and particularly I sit on the Ag subcommittee and also the Financial Services General Government subcommittees. And in the Ag bill, it's like, we're putting billions of dollars behind these programs that aren't fixing things. Farmer suicide rates are going up, farm consolidation is going up, national health is in decline. We're importing 40% of the fresh fruits and vegetables we consume. Wildfire is one of the largest emitters of CO2 in our state. We're getting less sleep, there's more suicide and depression in young people all across. So what are we doing with this money? And we can't keep trying to bring the same solutions to problems that are getting worse and worse. And instead talking about what do we really want, let's have a focus and an orientation around that. Electoral politics is not debate club. It is math. It is figuring out what are the areas of commonality where you can get a critical mass of people to stand together and pursue a reform or a program. And it's wild being in Congress, one, not really having come out of politics before, and two, representing a seat that there are so few seats like this left in the country. There are so few seats that have not been gerrymandered into an inch of their life. And so many of us feel like our values are, and our priorities aren't pursued. And it becomes this sort of slick, focus grouped agenda that's not what we asked for in the first place. And, we see this when I talk to our teachers, when I talk to other parents, how difficult it is for teachers to be able to just do the job that they signed up for, how much standardized testing there's been, the amount of time that is spent doing paperwork. Any nurse will tell you this, any doctor will tell you this. And how do we pursue the precursors of those things? Strong families. And I think coming out of there are not very many members of Congress who actually live in the rural part of the district they represent. And so it's a different lens, and I think a necessary one, of loyalty and detail. That this is not I believe it's not about a broad allegiance to environmentalism as a concept, but to specifically loving the Gifford-Pinchot, warts and all, and understanding how a federal policy would impact our woods. And when we bring that level of specificity and detail and intimacy to the federal process, if you can get 218 members of Congress showing up who know their woods, who know their rivers, you get much better federal policy. When you're talking about the thing itself, what you really want in concrete detail. And it's crazy because it feels like it's working. In some ways, right? I believe I have passed, I think I'm the only Democrat first-term Democrat on a PROPS who has passed amendments in the process. I've passed 4 amendments unanimously. I've had a few other things move through manager's amendments. I've had 1 amendment opposed unanimously. So, it's the kind of independence and community and self-sufficiency that I think places like Skamania County generate. We all carry a chainsaw in the back of our cars during winter to try, because you're going to need it. We all thank the PUD. We all know where our power comes from. We have a relationship that's concrete and that values independence and reliance on each other. So it's been a wild time. And I'll just touch briefly on some of the amendments I've passed. You all remember the infant formula shortage crisis? Because I was adding it was awful. And it's basically because we created a duopolistic system in the infant formula supply. There's a program within WIC. It's called the sole source contracting model. And it says that whatever manufacturer can give the biggest rebate to WIC for their program gets the entire state's contract. WIC is about 70% of all infant formula purchased in this country. 90% of the market follows whatever supplier gets the WIC contract, because you see the little sticker on the barcode at the grocery store. And so trying to unwind this, I got an amendment passed that requires the FDA and the FTC to get together and reevaluate the single source contracting model, because it's not working. I mean, it's not getting cheaper, and it's an incredibly fragile system. I think there are fewer than 10 members of Congress who have a child in daycare, so it's not real for them in the same way that it is for us. And so trying to bring that diversity of experience and thought to bear here was a real encouragement to be able to pass that. Another one that feels like small potatoes to a lot of people, but you all might know how everybody personally recognizes, but we don't talk often in big groups about how bright headlights have gotten. So like the old HID headlights, right? I was running an auto repair shop before this, so the old HID headlights, they maxed out at about 600 lumens. New LEDs max out at about 12,000 lumens, and it's blinding, and it's a real risk to safety. Safe driving is a team sport. You can't do that if you're blinded. Pedestrian deaths are going up. It's a real threat to safety, and those standards that NHTSA puts out have not been changed since before I was born. The last time they were reformed was in 1985. And so I think the important thing here is that we have a body of legislators in a federal government that is swimming in the same water as all of us, and says that the things that are important to us are the things that should be important to them. Being able to pass that amendment unanimously, it is an encouragement, because I think bipartisanship, there's a muscle memory to it. And if you let it atrophy too far, you are in a bad spot as a nation. And so saying that there's a external reality, there's a necessity, there's a correct place for regulation that is responsive to technology, and that driving safely matters. Those kinds of baseline things. I had another amendment passed. So I learned that only 30% of veterans are able to use their VA home loans. And Dean and I built our house here in Skamania County. I gotta say, like, Marlon Morat is like a personal hero to me. The old county building inspector. I haven't interacted as much with Philip. I think, I feel terrible, you know, we would not be homeowners if we had not been able to work with the county and build a house ourselves. We drew the plans with a pencil. We used the state prescriptive engineering standards. It cost about $120K for us to build our house. So, you know, homeownership is a real big way that people move wealth generationally and have security. And to hear that veterans functionally cannot use their VA home loans as an owner-builder was pretty upsetting to me. And so I got a piece of legislation, it was a pilot program, to say, yeah, you can use your VA home loans to build your own house, recognizing that a lot of veterans get out of the service with the skills relevant to self-sufficiency, and that this is it's a really good feeling to have agency in your life. It's a really strong suicide prevention to have that kind of physical reality around you. What I heard back was that you cannot introduce visual information into bill text. So I was not able to have a blueprint in my legislation. And I think this is reflective of the thing that, like, DC is a place made by lawyers for lawyers. And we're not bringing all of the forms of intelligence to bear to fix things in this country. We all deserve a seat at the table, whether or not you're academically gifted. You have a role to play in making good legislation. So I was able to pass an amendment in approach this year that creates the pathway to have visual information in bill text, so that we are all able to have a seat at the table and a place in building federal policy that reflects our values and our interests and our gifts. So that was an encouraging one. And I would say the one that was unanimously opposed recently in approach, I've heard a lot from a lot of my neighbors about a concern that DC is run by staffers and not by the elected member themselves. You know, I used to sit on the Underwood Soil and Water Conservation District Board of Supervisors. All 7 people who voted for me in that. And I remember going to these workshops about how are we going to keep farmland together? What is the plan of succession among families, and how do you handle that? Who gets the keys when? And we see this in every family business, that you have to have these kinds of conversations. When I looked at the ethics code about cognitive acuity in members of Congress, there was nothing. There are rules up, down, and sideways about what kind of baseball hat I can accept as a gift, whether or not my food comes on a toothpick or a plate. There's different rules. But what to do when a member of Congress is no longer the one making the decisions has never been addressed. It's a difficult subject. So my amendment directed the Office of Congressional Conduct to develop a standard that would allow them to evaluate, the ethics committee to evaluate whether a member is able to execute the duties of their office unimpeded by significant, irreversible cognitive decline. You know, I've been sitting in appropriations markup for the past several months, and they hang the portraits of the chairs around there. Kay Granger's portrait has been staring at me for the past 3 months. Kay Granger was the member of Congress who was found living in an Alzheimer's care facility while a sitting member of that office, had not voted in 8 months. This is not an amendment that should be easily exercised. I want to point out that the Ethics Committee is different than every other committee in Congress. It does not follow the majority, so it's always 50-50 Republican and Democrat. It does not have the authority to expel a member of Congress. That is in the Constitution. That has to go before the full body. You have to get 2/3 of the body to agree. But there is no criteria to make these evaluations. And trying to have a transparent system to have these discussions about what to do when a member of Congress is no longer able to execute their duties in a way that reflects credibly on their office. I think this is a conversation that we have in every other corner of the country, and we have not seen in Congress a willingness to have these discussions themselves. And it's about loyalty to your constituents and them having the information that they need, and also not a misplaced loyalty to a colleague, but to transparency and information that's nonpartisan. And so, going to continue to work on this. You know, in the polling I've seen, I mean, I sent out an email, and I think it was like 89% of of respondents to my newsletter strongly support this amendment, and it's something that I've heard from all of you, many of you, about across the district, across Southwest Washington. And so finding ways to animate that and build the strongest body possible to make these decisions, to animate our priorities and not just hold the line on loyalty to a colleague, but to really represent our districts as best we can. The last thing, I'll bring, thank you.
No, thank you so much.
The last thing that I want to be sure to mention is that my office, I've made sure everybody in my teams knows how seriously I take casework. And just to really encourage you, if there's any issue that touches a federal agency in your life, we want to be there to fight alongside you for that. We take it very, very seriously. We've been really effective in being able to get those VA benefits, to get the records, to get passports in a case of emergency. We take it really seriously, and so when you hear about things, whether, if it's FHA, whatever it is that you're looking at, we want to be useful, and we want to be here for you. And please don't feel like it's a narrow self-interest to bring an issue to my office, because oftentimes what that does is that it illuminates a broader systemic issue. And it's a really important thing to sort of tighten that circle between the policy idea and how it's actually experienced at the implementation level. So having that accountability and transparency really matters. And we've been, I think we're at, Gwen's here, Tabitha's here, they've been really effective in casework. I think we're at $5 million this year alone, in the past, this year alone, in getting tax dollars back to constituents. So, let me get the letterhead to work for you. I take it very seriously, and it's a privilege to get to take up that work. So I'm very curious to hear what you guys are thinking about and what questions you have. And again, thank you so much for being here. It's a real encouragement.
Okay, first question.